Hello,
All right.
everyone. Welcome. So today I'm having a conversation with Roseanne Vargas about self-love. We are going to dive in, maybe get a little deep, so possibly trigger warning, and just reminder to love yourself. If you don't want to listen, turn it off. If you want to dive deep, continue to listen. So welcome, Rose. Thank you
Hi.
so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This is so exciting. This is one of my favorite subjects to talk about, and I could talk for hours. So I cannot wait to dive in with you. So I would love for you to start us off with a little bit about your own healing journey. How did you get to this place?
Okay. Where it began. All right. May 14th of 2017. It was Mother's Day. And I am a survivor of domestic violence and childhood trauma. And May 14th, it was Mother's Day of 2017. It was Mother's Day. I had been going through a really terrible custody battle over my children, and I didn't have my kids in my care, and I was in a lot of pain. My significant other, who was my best friend, was supposed to come and be with me and spend the day with me. And because I was struggling, I had fallen into some really crappy behavior because I didn't love myself. I was drinking and abusing drugs heavily, and my significant other didn't show up, and I was just already devastated, and I was even more devastated. The promise to be there, and he didn't show up, and the next day and wasn't answering my calls, and the next day I got the call that he had died in a car accident the day before on his way to come
Oh,
see me,
wow.
and crushed. I had had about 60 days sober at the time, and I relapsed. I ended up getting taken to jail because I was drunk and loaded in public, and they took me into custody. And while I was there, I was fighting this case. I ended up getting released to a treatment facility, a dual diagnosis treatment facility for PTSD and substance use disorder. And I didn't know that there was anything wrong with me. I had been through these traumas. The father of my children tried to kill me. There was a lot of just super crazy things that happened that I ran away from because I ran from him. He told me, if you leave, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to make sure you never see your kids again. And he made good on the trying to kill me thing. And I didn't die, obviously. But, I ended up he had my kids taken from me, and I was traumatized. I was heartbroken. I was betrayed, and I was in a lot of pain, and so went into this place, and they gave me help. I did intensive trauma therapy for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 2 months straight.
Wow.
I still did, while I was there, I was able to get into some things within me that I had repressed. My mother was a drug addict. I experienced a lot of sexual abuse as a result of her negligence as a child, and I didn't realize that it was affecting me. And as I was in this trauma therapy, I'm talking about these things, and it's all kind of like bubbling up and coming out, and I'm just like, here I am, vulnerable and in pain, and I'm just, these things are coming out, right? And those were the things that I was running from, right? The things that I had always, masked with, false pride, ego, money, shopping, I have the nice clothes, I have the nice family, I have this, I have that. And it was never good enough, right? I never understood why it was never good enough for me. But it was because I had this hole in my heart that was shaped like me, but I wasn't in it. Right. And so nothing, I was feeding on everything outside of myself, never understanding that what I needed I already had. I just had to come to a place where I could find it again. And over the years, with all of the different things and all the different traumas and the experiences, it got buried. So, you know, when I'm in this trauma therapy group, I started to pull some of that stuff out, right? And it was like an infection in all the areas of my body. It affected how I loved my children. It affected
Oh,
how I
yeah.
was as a woman. It affected who I was in all my relationships, whether they were romantic, platonic, friendships, anything, even the ability to be employed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was I was participating in this, and then I started like pulling things out, right? By the handful, just all this blackness, all this terror, all this pain, all this hurt, all of the abandonment and all of the abuse. And I started to feel relief. Every time I would just take this stuff out, I would cry and I would just be in that gut wrenching ball of pain. And then once the feeling was over, I was, oh, I can breathe.
Wow.
And it was just, the feeling was, it was a rush. It felt good. I felt refreshed, and that feeling, that heaviness on my shoulders that had me like this, I suddenly started to feel, you know, like I could stand erect. I felt lighter. I felt moments of freedom, and I wanted more, you know, because I have that total like addict mentality, like I want more, right? Because I had never felt like that before. I never felt that feeling. And so I just continued on that journey. And, you know, I've been clean and sober since. I have continued to go to therapy. You know, I've sought treatment for the substance use issues in a 12-step fellowship, which has helped me tremendously. Um, And when I got out of that place, I needed more. I needed more. And I went to an outpatient program that was an intensive outpatient program. And, you know, I needed to continue to do the work because I knew that that was just the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because by the time I got out, I had uncovered enough to understand that, you know, because I had remembered the childhood stuff, at the age of 37 years old, I realized, okay, so if I'm still in baby days, there's a lot more work to be done. So, you know, when I put myself in therapy some more, and, you know, I proceeded to just get butt naked and walk right in, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
greatest decision of my life. What I didn't understand at that moment was that I was choosing to love myself for the first time. I was choosing to, you know, because I had abandoned myself in all those relationships, right? For the first time in my life, I had chose myself first. And I didn't realize that that was really the foundation. I was laying a foundation. I just knew that I just didn't want to feel this way anymore. And I was going to do whatever it took to change that. Right. And so, you know, I just kept digging in and getting deeper and getting deeper. And, you know, I continued to do the work. I did therapy. I had a sponsor. I started doing work on sponsorship with my sponsor, and, you know, getting into the things that go on in my mind, because I know that, you know, in order for me to be healthy, it's not just how I feel, it's about what I think, my perception, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to heal Rose. I'm a human being. Rose is a human being, right? Human, this is my human, this physical self, my body, that's my human, right? My spirit and my feelings, that's the being. That's the being that is Rose. That is the being that was trapped in that little nightmare, right? So I have to take a completely holistic approach. I got to grab the bull by the horns, and I have to touch every space inside and outside of me,
Yeah.
you know? And so it started by, you know, choosing not to take any drugs or abuse them or to drink excessively, right? So quit doing that. And, I quit smoking cigarettes, and I started taking care of my body, right? And I'm doing therapy to talk to get, to get through what I am feeling so that I can come up with some positive coping skills, because I had none, right? And then I'm doing all this work in my 12-step fellowship that's addressing the diseased thinking that I had, and to change that perception, to get that shift in perception, because that's what needed to happen. I needed to have a moment of clarity. I needed to have a moment where the light turned on and I was able to see my way in the dark, even if it was just far enough to move forward to turn on the next light, because the process has been layered, right? The first year,
Definitely.
that first year of my recovery was about learning how to live without drinking or using or abusing myself in the ways that I do, because I will eat too much, I will tan too much, I won't eat enough, I won't drink enough water, I won't be active, I'll act out in self-harm, like, having sex with people that I have no desire to have a relationship with, or fixating on sex, fixating on men, fixating on relationships, fixating on anything outside of me so that I don't have to sit with what's going on inside here, right?
Wow. Yep. I think
And
that's a
then,
pattern that many of us have faced in our adult experience.
yeah, and
Really
it's a
running away
very,
from things.
right, and it's a long distance between this and this. And sometimes they're telling me two different things, right?
Yep,
Right. And it gets confusing
absolutely.
and it causes chaos.
It really does. Wow. So now that you're here, how is life different?
It's unrecognizable. Sometimes when
You've
I look back,
transformed.
yeah, really a total transformation. I think when I look back at my life, it doesn't even feel like my life. It feels like I'm remembering scenes of that Lifetime movie that made me cry. It feels like that sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
but but I never want to forget. I don't ever want to forget, right? Like I have done a lot of work. I've literally
Seems
spent
like
the
it.
last 5 years, because May 14th, it's going to be 6 years, right? Since that cataclysmic event, right? My actual sobriety date is May 26th of 2017. But so it'll be 6 years, right? And I have stayed single. I didn't want to date because I knew that I was fixing on relationships. And part of the process in doing the work was recognizing that I've been a caretaker all my life. I didn't know who I was. I didn't love myself. I had no respect for myself. I had no respect for, anything, and my through the process of healing and doing the work, I realized that I wasn't even capable of loving my children properly, because my idea of love was so distorted as a result of my childhood, right?
Yeah.
So, I have had to unlearn a lot. I've had to, you know, do a lot of soul searching
Yeah.
to
Almost like
get in.
rebuilding, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I had to tear down that old thinking, those old patterns of behavior, the inability to cope. I had to get rid of all of it, tear it all down. But in the process of tearing it down, I couldn't just tear it down. I had to take a look at what I was tearing down, because I had to understand where it came from.
Yep.
Because where I come from is the basis of what and who I became, you know? And you know, when I was going through, because it was weird, it was like I went backwards. It started with this stuff with my kids and talking about, okay, I started with the whole like significant other death thing. And then it went into the kid thing. And then it turned into like the abusive relationship. And then all of a sudden we kind of like hovered over that for a moment. And I had to spend some time really digging into that, because I can't be mad at a dog for being a dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to take a look. It wasn't about what he had done to me. It was about, why did I choose this person?
Yes.
Why did I stay with him? I was with him for 10 years. So it's not like we got together and all of a sudden it got crazy. You know what I'm saying? There were 10 years of me doing the same thing, me chasing my tail. So I had to get honest, and I had to get butt naked honest with myself and ask myself the real question, right? Like, he is, and when I look backwards, he is and was who he was from day one. It wasn't about him. It was about me, my choice. Why did I choose that person? And here's where I picked the ball up and moving backwards even further and going back to the root of my problem was, I loved him. 100% know that I loved him, but my idea of love was distorted.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about that relationship and how it started, oh my gosh, I was so in love. I was so in love. And I had the butterflies all the time. And I literally felt like this the whole 10 years that we were together, even afterwards, right? And I was like, why? What's going on, right? And so, and doing the work, what it was I remember the moment that I fell in love with them. I remember sitting across the table from him at Harbor House in Dana Point, and just it was our first date, and we were having this conversation, and it was like a light switch. All of a sudden he was like, oh my God, I'm in love with you, right? And I remember that distinctly. I remember the feeling. I remember it still brings this love up, right? Because it really was love. It is love. Love doesn't stop because we're not together, right? I just have to stay in the reality that he's not the person, that's not my person, right? Like, I don't respect him and I don't trust him. I can love him, but I don't have to have him in my life,
Right.
because he hurts me. He would hurt me. So when I got into that, and I really took a good deep look and sat on that one, I realized that, I had chose a familiar pain. I had unhealed trauma from my childhood. I was raised by my mom. My mom was a drug addict. I was sexually abused, and, all of the things that happened then, right? And so, and she was a part of that stuff, right?
Sure.
And so that was my first exposure to love. Love hurt. Love was abusive. Love meant sex. Love was abandonment. Love was getting beat up. Love was getting yelled at. Love was me taking care of my siblings because my mom wasn't capable of doing that, right? Love meant that I didn't matter. Only you did.
Wow.
So I loved him. I loved him from the deepest space of my spirit, right? But because that was my idea of love, when I saw all of the narcissistic, abusive red flags coming up, they didn't register as red flags to me. They were green flags, because in my mind, that was love.
Wow.
And what I didn't realize, and this is something that I just learned literally like 6 months ago, was when in my spirit, when I get the butterflies, when I meet someone, that's my spirit telling me red flag, don't go there. That's called anxiety. We're raised to think I need butterflies in my stomach and it's love. No, that's your spirit telling you run. Learn that, and the comparison between that is a loving, healthy relationship is natural. And I know for a fact because I have someone in my life that I love. And it's so natural and things are coming together in a healthy, loving way, right? And it just feels good.
Mm-hmm. There's no bad feelings. There's no pain. It just feels yummy. I can relate.
Yes. And there's no fear, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's no anxiety. There's no nothing. And at first I thought, whoa, what is this? I guess I don't really like this person. And I was having that conversation with my sponsor. She's like, no, Rose. I was talking with my therapist and my therapist said that the whole butterflies thing is your soul telling you, don't go there, right? So I had the butterflies for 10 years with this guy. My soul was telling me.
Your body was trying to say, hey, stop it.
You know what? You can, right? And I didn't know that because I was misled, right? And going back to that is, I chose a familiar pain. All the red flags were green flags, but that was because my head was so distorted from that childhood. So, all right, I had to put my seatbelt on and I had to go dig in deeper and get into that childhood stuff.
Yep.
And
so when do you think you realized that self-love was missing?
I think on a subconscious level, I've known it the whole time.
Sure.
Because in my spirit, it was always chaos. Why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve it? So I think that my spirit always knew that I didn't love myself. I just didn't have the knowledge or the wisdom to actually do it. And being that whole mind of mine was so distorted on what love was. I thought that I was being loved, but I wasn't. I was abusing myself by staying in these sick patterns and relationships. I was abandoning myself by showing up for everyone else but myself. I was loving myself according to what I believed love was. And my spirit was screaming inside of me the whole time going, what are you doing? Like, this hurts. But because my head and my heart, like, again, the distance between this and this is very, very far, couldn't connect. It never connected, right? It couldn't connect because there was no sense in it, right?
Right. Right.
And
so when do you think you made the connection? Like at what point in this journey did you finally say, oh my God, I need to love myself?
Well, I don't think that there was any like real realization that I needed to love myself. I knew that I needed to love myself the whole time, just didn't know how. Because again, I didn't realize that loving myself wasn't what I had been doing. I thought that I loved myself.
Okay.
Because remember, my idea of love was distorted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I needed to uncover, and this is where all the other stuff really like became paramount in everything, because in the process of the therapy, in the process of the step work, right, I had to uncover some truths before I was able to even really understand that my idea of love was distorted. My idea of love was not love, it was abuse. I didn't understand that. There was no recognition because it was not, there was no recognition because I didn't know that, right? There was no awareness. And so I think the beginning of that started when I did the 4th step. I had to do an inventory. And my first sponsor had a very similar upbringing with the mom thing. And I remember hearing her sharing her story, and I just knew, oh my gosh, you have to be my sponsor. I waited and I let her know. I'm like, oh my God, you sharing about what I went through. Like, please help me. I need help. And so she did. And so when we were in that 4th step, I wrote about the stuff with my mom. And when we began to process this, right? She asked me when I finished, well, what was your part in it, Rose? And I was so pissed. I was like, oh my God, what? How dare you?
No, this happened to me, damn it.
How dare you, right? Like, oh, I put my hands under my thing because I felt really upset. And I just, in my spirit, I knew this person knew what they were talking about. And I was so desperate for relief from that feeling that I was willing to do whatever it took, even if I didn't understand. So I asked her, I said, okay, look, I don't understand what you mean by what is my part. I feel very offended. I'm going to try to not be offended because I trust you. I know that you know what you're doing. I know that you love me, and you've told me you're going to love me until I learn how to love myself. And I want what you have. So please explain that to me, because I just don't understand. And I was so upset. And she's like, okay, well, you have a part in everything. What was your part in it? Right. And remember, when I had to deal with my part in the domestic violence, right? My part in it was because that was my choice. Right.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't my fault, but it was my choice. And it wasn't about what he did. It was about my decision, my choice to walk into that and to stay. So one more time, I'm faced with that. Okay, so what was my part? And I could feel it coming up to my throat. And I said, I don't understand. I feel frustrated. I don't feel like I had any part in being sexually abused or any of the stuff that happened to me because of my mom. At the hands of my mom. I was just there. Like, I had no part in it. I was just there. And she goes, there you go, Rose. And I'm like, what? I don't get it. She's like, okay, say it again. I'm like, I didn't have a part in it. I was just there. She goes, okay, now say that last part. I'm like, I was just there. She goes, just keep saying it. Just keep saying that. And I'm like, I was just there. I was just there. Oh man, I was just there. Right.
Yeah.
And just, it gives me like the chills, and the feeling in that, the freedom in that statement. I was just there. My part was that I was just there. My part was that I didn't know as a little girl that what my mom was doing was wrong. As a little girl, I didn't know that I couldn't trust my caretakers. And I realized that I had been hating myself and destroying myself for years, carrying the guilt and the shame of what someone else did to me. And it didn't even belong to me. It wasn't even mine. And at that moment, I was able to let it go. I was able to give back the guilt, to give back the shame that belongs to her and not me. And I believe that was the moment where I got my humanity back.
Yes.
Because for the first time in my life, I saw myself as a human. I felt sad, and I cried. There was a lot of crying and grieving for that child. because I was robbed. You know, I was robbed. I was robbed of a lot. And I robbed myself. When the abuse stopped in the hands of my mom, I chose to pick up the bat and abuse myself because that was all I knew. And then I entered into a relationship that abused me the same way that my mom did because that was all I knew. And
Yes.
here I am sitting at a table in Starbucks, trying not to freak out because I'm experiencing freedom unlike I've ever felt before. Not knowing what is this feeling. And all of a sudden, this empathy that I was able to give other people, I suddenly felt for myself.
Mm.
I mean, it was such a radical experience. I was like, oh my God, what am I feeling right now? Why do I feel so heartbroken? You know, because I was raised with that don't feel sorry for yourself type attitude, right? But this wasn't that. This wasn't feeling sorry for myself. This was sadness and this was heartbreak that that little child was just totally misused. And it was so heartbreaking to imagine that someone did that to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, you know, here I am at Starbucks with the sponsor and she's holding me and I'm crying like a little baby. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is so intense. Oh my gosh, what's happening to me? And she's like, you're experiencing empathy, Rose. You love yourself. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's what love feels like. That's what love feels like.
Yes, it does.
Love feels good. Love feels free. Love acknowledges that I'm worthy of being treated with kindness and respect. Right?
Yes.
And it was just huge. I mean, I think that was a very pivotal moment for me. You know, prior to that, I didn't see myself.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have value in me because I was always a caretaker. I was always used my whole life. If someone wasn't using me, I was using myself in ways that were destructive to my spirit, right? That reinforced that distorted thinking in my mind.
Right. So take me through what you do today to
Today,
engage on that self-love. What do you do? What are your self-care practices?
well, in 2019, 2019, I wanted very deeply to go deeper, right? I still feel the need to get deeper. I want to go deeper because this has been a process, right? 2019, I wanted total freedom. Like total freedom, right? Emphasis on the total. I wanted to go deeper. I didn't want to just love myself. I wanted to have unconditional self-love.
Yes.
So unconditional self-love started by letting my hair go. I stopped dyeing my hair. I decided to let the gray grow out, right? I stopped wearing all the makeup, you know, because I was like, okay, I don't need to hide that. I don't need to hide my skin, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. I have freckles and you know what I'm saying? I get some wrinkles here and there, whatever matter. Like I wanted freedom. I wanted to be able to walk out of my house and feel good about who I am as a person because self-love starts inside, you know, but unconditional self-love is about loving every part of me inside, in here, and out here. So I started working out. I started eating clean. I don't drink soda. I don't eat processed food. I don't eat junk food. I quit smoking cigarettes. I stopped dyeing my hair. I stopped putting on a bunch of makeup. And I just and it was really uncomfortable. It was really uncomfortable. People gave me a lot of crap about it. They're like, you're going to look old. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. This isn't about you. This is about me learning how to love myself unconditionally. And so, I got used to it, right? And I let my hair go, and I was just like, yeah, I love my hair now. I love it. I feel it's very empowering for me to not be constricted to that whole, like, oh, I got to look this way or I got to look that way, right? Embracing my body the way that it is, right? And so I started doing this whole unconditional self-love thing, right? And then I came across a little roadblock where one day I wasn't loving myself physically. And I'm like, okay, so why don't I love myself physically? What's going on with me, right? Because on a daily basis, I consistently, I get up, I go outside, I feed the birds because I love the sound of the birds singing. I like to sit in my little space and drink my coffee and listen to the birds outside singing. And I do my little meditation. I, have a conscious contact with a higher power on a daily basis, because there is a power greater than me that guides me in my daily living, that I want contact with, because that has been a really big, big help as I'm walking through this process, right? And so, I reached this spot and I was like really upset. I was like not okay with me. And I'm like, okay, where is this coming from, right? And part of that journey of self-love is self-care, okay? And part of self-care is doing the things that I need to do, the action that I take to love myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I found this moment. It was a moment where I wasn't loving myself, and I took it as an opportunity because there was light being shown on me on something going on. So I literally got butt naked. I got butt naked, honest with myself. I got butt naked and I stood in front of my mirror in my bedroom because I have this big closet wall mirror, and I just started looking at myself. And I'm like, okay, what don't I love? Like, I feel beautiful inside, but when I'm looking at me, I don't feel like I look beautiful. What's going on? I haven't been here in a long time. What do you want me to see? I asked for discernment, and it dawned on me, I look like my mom.
Oh, wow.
How do I love me when I look like my abuser? Right?
Mm.
So I had to sit butt naked, and I had to look at me, and I had to get quiet, and I had to really like allow myself to feel the feelings. And when I was done, I came to the conclusion that I'm not her. I'm not her. I needed to find forgiveness for her so that I could be free. So I realized that I was looking at her through my eyes. So I needed to look at me through my eyes, not looking at her. I'm not looking at her. I'm looking at me. And I needed to detach. And, my higher power saw fit to present me with an opportunity to actually deal with her. She came because, again, like a couple years ago, I made the decision that I don't want a relationship with her. It was very toxic for me. And so I've chosen not to have that relationship. And I was presented with an opportunity. She called. I'd inherited some stuff from my grandma who passed away. And she had reached out to me. And it was that opportunity that the universe provided me to process the rest of that moment, right? So I went into that, and I took my power back, right? And I was able to hold a boundary. She wanted to talk to me. I said, no, I'm not here to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. We're not friends. I don't want a relationship with you. I'm not ready. And I was able to hold that boundary. When I got there, she wanted to talk and do all this stuff. And it's like, no, I have nothing to say to you. I've come to get the things. I'll help you clean if that's what you need, because you're here alone. I'll help you. But other than that, there's no conversation, and she and I didn't participate, and I made the conscious decision not to participate in the dysfunction. I loved myself enough to hold that boundary and not get into it. She wanted to gossip about my sisters. I said, I don't want to talk about it. That's your stuff. That's your stuff with your daughters. I want nothing to do with any of you guys. I know I'm not, like, please give me my space, and so I loved myself, right? And I behaved as the woman that I've become as a result of loving myself, right?
Yeah.
And I treated her with respect, regardless of who she is or how she's ever treated me. I treated her, in a respectful way. I held the boundary. I didn't harm her by participating in gossip or participating in toxic behavior, right? I stayed true to who I was. And when I walked out of that, I felt like I could breathe all of a sudden, right?
Wow. Mm.
Because I was able to treat that person in the way that I would want them to treat me, even though they didn't treat me that way.
Yeah.
Because I'm me and not her. And it really was a very freeing experience. It was very freeing to be able to come out of that. And I walked out of that and I was like, wow, that was, because I was terrified of going. I literally couldn't sleep the night before because I was just like, oh my God, what if I get angry? Lose my temper and I say something nasty? That's not who I am today. I don't talk to myself like that. So I don't talk to other people like that. That's a big thing. Self-talk is a big deal,
Oh yeah.
self-talk is a big deal. My spirit and my body doesn't know that I'm joking if I call myself fat, or, you know what I'm saying? My body, the cells, they absorb all the trauma. They absorb all the feelings. It stays stored in your muscle. That's why when they talk about working out, they talk about muscle memory, right? It remembers, your body stores this stuff, and we had talked about this a little bit earlier about how, part of the process of healing isn't just a mental thing. It's not just an emotional thing. It's a physical thing as well. As I'm going through this whole process of trying to connect the dots and walking through the emotions so that I could correct my thinking, I'm also experiencing physical stuff because this stuff stays in your body, right? Learning, part of the self-love thing is learning how to listen to my body. When I'm processing heavy things, I know that I need to take special care of my body because my body is releasing all of that pain and all of that trauma. And so I got to make sure that I'm practicing self-care because I'm doing this self-love journey. So got to drink extra water. If I'm tired, I need to sleep. Take a nap if I need to take a nap. Take a break if I need to take a break. I need to eat if I need to eat. Or, if I'm not feeling good, allow myself to feel what I need to feel, but to nurture my body because my body has done a lot. My body, has held it together despite all the things that have happened, right? And it's a beautiful thing, but I need to nurture that too. That's also a big part of the self-love journey, is understanding that this is all connected. If I want to operate as a whole human being, I need to nurture my mind, my body, and my soul.
Oh yes.
Big, big stuff. Speaking of.
Oh, thank you, Rose. This is so, so good. I know that a lot of what we're realizing in this lifetime, in this time, as healers, as light workers, as, just awakened beings on this planet right now, is that we've been subjected to abuse and trauma and all of these things. And yet there are layers underneath all of that that ensure that we're going to survive. They ensure that we can find a way to bliss and to love and to joy, that there is a path, regardless of where we start from. There's always a path to that. That's, I think, the most beautiful thing about realizing self love, realizing that we have this potential within us, is that it's been there the whole time, and we just had to look at it. So it's wonderful to hear your journey and to hear how you've processed all of the
Mhm.
pain to come to this place. It's really beautiful. You know,
Yeah.
something that has always inspired about me, about you and me connecting on Facebook, is that you're constantly posting I love you. And I do that all the time as well. And so that was when I saw the first time you did it, I was like, I love you too. And I was the only one that said I love you too. Everyone was like, love ya, or oh, that's so sweet, or you know. And so tell me about that. Why do you post I love you?
Um, it started because I needed to hear it. I needed, part of loving me is hearing I love you, right? Um, I've learned that self care and self love are, it's everything, right? It's everything. It's what we consume on a daily basis, right? What do I put into my
Mhm.
body, right? Am I putting love into my body, right?
Yes.
And then we go back to that whole like self-talk thing, right? I needed to feel okay. I was doing the unconditional self-love stuff, right? So I was trying to like get super deep into some things. And part of it was learning how to have positive self-talk. I needed to tell myself, I love you more. I needed to thank my body for being so patient with me as I am healing everything. Like thanks for hanging on. I love you. Thank you. Even on the days when I don't love you, because there are part of unconditional self-love means that it's okay to not love myself, right? And the days that I don't love myself, it goes back to the mirror moment where I get to an opportunity to see a space in me that needs love, nurturing, and healing. And so I was in that process of those discoveries of, okay, why don't I love myself? Well, Rose, if you don't love yourself, then what can you do to love yourself? What are self-care steps? And so I started writing, I love you. I love you. I wrote it on post-its around the house. I'm walking around the house. When I walk past the mirror, when I walk past my shadow, I love you. Because I needed to hear I love me. Right.
That's beautiful.
And
Yeah.
the response that I got from it, it made me feel good. It
Oh
made me,
yeah.
because so many people, I love you too. I needed to hear that. Right. And I needed to feel loved by others. There's a very important feeling to feel like I matter, to feel like I'm important, to have a stranger love me because I'm worthy of love,
Yeah.
right? And so it just kind of turned into this thing where I saw that there was other, because obviously other people are going through it too, right? We all go through this. We
Of
all
course.
we
Yes,
all
we're all reflections of each other.
Yeah. And so it really made me feel good to get to see the response. I thought people were gonna be like, oh, you're weird, but it didn't matter. It wasn't about them. It started with me loving me, right? Because if I can love myself unconditionally, then I can love you unconditionally. That means I get to meet
Yes.
you where you are. No judgment. Just here you are. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you. And all of time, forward, backwards, in space, in all the universe, there's only one you. And you're spending your time with me. What a treasure, right? It's so valuable, and to acknowledge how amazing that really is, not just in myself, but in everyone that I meet, right?
Yes.
Like the value of that, the value of time. We don't get our time back. So what are we going to do with it? What am I going to do with that time? How does Rose build, how am I going to build a life that I love, right? It has to start with
Yes.
me. It has to start with that self-love. It has to go deeper into the self-love journey, right? well, part of me needs to be healed now. Something comes up. Okay. It's not about why me. It's about what do I need to see?
Mm.
What's coming up, like feeling the feelings, right? Allowing myself to feel the feelings. I had a little in 2020, I was feeling lonely, and I sat with the loneliness, and I realized that it was a feeling of abandonment, right? And I was like, okay, so I'm done. I made the decision that I love myself and I'm not going to feel abandoned anymore. So I'm going to feel my feelings, because that's what I've learned how to do in my journey, is a lot of allowing myself to feel what comes up so that I can come out the other side. So I let myself feel the feelings. I went in my room, I closed the door. I laid on the floor with my body pillow and a box of tissue. And I proceeded to just cry, scream, kick, punch my pillow, and to the point where I lost my voice. And all of a sudden I was just like, okay, now I'm done. And when I sat there, I realized I needed to take contrary action. Like, if I feel abandoned, what's the opposite of abandonment, right? It's being loved and cared for. So
Acceptance. Yes.
I send a text message to my dad, because I had an abandonment issue from my father, my parents, the same, a lot of people have it, right? So I had this abandonment issue. So I texted my dad. I said, hey, it's me. I don't really need a response. I just need to tell you how I feel. I'm really struggling today with the abandonment issue that I feel as a result of you not being there in my childhood. And I just I expressed myself in a loving way, and I sent the text off, and I didn't expect anything. Like a couple hours later, he texted me, okay, kid. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. And I wasn't expecting that. And then it came up again a couple months later. All of a sudden I had that same feeling. I'm like, okay, then here we go. Went in the room, went on repeat. Right. And at the end of it, I was like, okay, I'm done. What am I going to do? So I sent him a text. Right. And this time he actually responded. He called me about an hour later, and he apologized for the delay. I was like, I was in the middle of something, but I'm calling you now. I just got out and I'm calling you. And I just want to tell you that keep up the good work. And then I'm here if you need me. And I was just
Wow.
like, oh, wow, okay. It wasn't
Wow.
the response I was getting. It wasn't the response that I wanted. I didn't really want a response. I guess I can't say that it wasn't what I wanted. I just didn't expect anything, right? Because one thing I've learned about expectations is when I place okay, it starts with labels. When I label things, it creates an expectation. And
Mhm.
when I create expectations, I create limitations, because that is, I'm putting it in a box, and it's not going to go any
Yeah.
further than the box, because in my mind, I've already labeled it what it is. I've called it what it is. So it's never going to grow, right? So by removing labels, by removing expectations, I'm removing the limitations, because the potential for growth is beyond me, and I need to step out of the way, right? And I say this all the time. Life motto is, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it. That means that I'm out of the way and I'm allowing things to be happening naturally, organically as they come up, right? So,
Right.
ended up going through that whole thing with him, and it opened a door in that relationship. And we ended up, having a lot of really intense conversations, and he and I used to argue all the time. And after I had done that, all of a sudden he became receptive to me, and I started talking to him about what happened, and talking to him, and I told him the truth. I got tired of, people pleasing, because that's a part of that old behavior, is like, I'm going to be dishonest just to please you, because I'm afraid that you're not going to love me, and you're not going to like me, or you're not going to
Right.
accept me, right?
Right.
So part of that unconditional self-love was I needed to get honest with my dad. And I told him, I hate you. I hate you. I've come to the conclusion, and I told him that. I'm like, I need to be honest with you. Like, I hate you, and I have a resentment towards you. Like, you abandoned me, and you left me with that monster who did nothing but abuse me and terrorize me for years. And I hate you for that. However, now I understand that, how would you know not to leave your daughter with her mother? You didn't know that.
Oh,
So I can't be angry and hate you for something that you weren't aware of. And I forgive you.
mm,
And he was just like, he didn't know how to respond. And I was like, whatever happened, happened. I get it. But, I know that my anger and resentment towards you has always been a hindrance in us ever having a relationship, because we could never get along. We could never talk. There was never, it was always
right.
arguing. We could never, and so at one more time, because I chose to love myself, right? And I had to get honest. And I told him, like, number one, I don't chase men. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm not any man. And I go, well, it's the truth. You aren't any man, so I'm not going to chase you, because it's always felt like a one-sided relationship. And I don't participate in one-sided relationships anymore. I stopped doing the things that don't make me feel good about myself. It didn't feel good to chase my dad, And so I told him that. I'm like, and I came to the conclusion that didn't matter if I told you the truth or not, because it wasn't going to change the relationship. So here I am, and I need to tell you the truth. And he was just like, whoa.
Wow.
But the truth of the matter is that was the beginning to some healing to happen between us. It opened the door for him to hear me. It opened the door because I was able to forgive him, to find softness in my heart, to hear the other side, his side,
Mm,
and
yeah.
actually just recently in February, he had a 60th birthday. And oh my gosh, it was intense. I wasn't going to go, but I went. And his wife and and my siblings, they were all talking about my dad, and all his church friends were there. There's like 50 people, something like that there, and all these people. And I always feel really awkward because I am an adult. His kids are the ages of my children.
Mhm.
Wife is 3 years older than me, so it's a little crunchy and awkward because I don't really fit in. I don't fit in with the kids because I'm too old, but I'm about the same age as him and his friends, or his wife and their friends. And it's weird because I'm not a parent, but I am a parent, so it's like that weird situation. So here I am, and his wife is like, you want to say something about your dad? And I'm like, okay. So I went to sit up there, and he said, just speak from the heart. And I like looked over, and I'm like, well, and all of a sudden I get this memory that came up of one time where he showed up and I was under the influence. And I don't know why that memory came up, but I remember that. And I remembered how heartbroken he was to see me like that. And I remember seeing my dad crying,
Wow.
like bawling, and I could literally feel his heart breaking looking at me like that. I remembered that at that moment. And I said that. I'm like, yeah, and one thing that I had come to that realization as, and I had this conversation with my sponsor about it, about how, what my expectations, like I expect my dad to be like, come and love me and treat me like I'm one of the girls. Like I'm not, I'm a grown woman now, you know? And she was like, yeah, why don't you just let your dad love you how he can? Like he can't treat you the way that he would your siblings. He has to treat you like an adult. Like allow him to show up for you in your life in the ways that he can show up for you. There have been moments, because I went back to school, right? And there have been moments where he has supported me financially through my schooling, right? And my sponsor pointed that out. She goes, Rose, if that's the only way that he can show up for you, he's showing up for you, like when you call it, when you text him, you're going through some stuff and he shows up for you, like allow him to show up for you. And I had to really I had to check myself, right? And so I'm like, okay. And so here I am, and I'm talking about it, and I'm thanking him for showing up for me and whatever. And he started crying, and everyone's like kind of like emotional because I'm talking about this
Oh,
moment and how, I was like, yeah, I thanked him for loving me. I thanked him for praying to his higher power to help me come out the other side of all those things that I went through. And at the end of it all, when he got up to say thank you to everybody for being there, he says, I want to thank everybody for being here, but first I need to ask my daughter for forgiveness.
oh, wow.
And I started bawling. In all my life, I never thought I would ever hear it from that prideful ass Mexican man. He's so, he is very much the stereotype of a Hispanic man, right? And he asked like in front of everybody, and I was just like, oh, like, but he's just like bawling in tears,
Mhm.
asking for my forgiveness, right? Because when I love myself unconditionally, I can meet people where they are, and I can hold space to understand their side. And when I do that, it opens the door to connect in the heart for moments like that to happen.
Yep. You made me cry.
Oh, I mean,
Ugh.
it's intense.
Mhm. Well, and that's the beauty of love.
Mm,
It will clear away all the junk. It will open you up and split you open so that you can truly experience life. It's
mhm.
one of the most powerful things on the planet. I will believe that until I die, that love is one of the most powerful things on the planet. And when you bring unconditional love into any conversation, it opens up so much potential for our healing, our growth,
Yeah.
our our expansion.
Hmm. It gives room for the person you're dealing with to grow as well and to
Hmm.
heal them as well. And that is something that I have been observing, is that the ability to love myself unconditionally allows me to love everybody other I come in contact with unconditionally. And as a result of that, not only as an example, all right, it gives them the freedom to love themselves as they are, where they are, because they're feeling it, right? It's contagious.
It is contagious.
It's contagious. You can feel it when you walk into the room, right? You can feel it when you hear someone talking about it. You can feel the love just emanating out of the person, right? And it draws you in and it pulls you close and it puts you in a space that's just, this little heart space that most of the time we don't get access to unless we are in a situation that opens us up to it, to receive it. When we receive it, it begins to permeate throughout your body, in your spirit, and it begins to put, to change that shift in perception, right? Because as we
Mhm.
raise our own frequency, our own vibration, by default, we raise the vibration of everything around us.
Definitely. Hmm. And that is the magic.
Yes,
That
absolutely. Absolutely.
beautiful. So before we started recording, you mentioned the concept of stewardship.
Mm,
Can you expand on that a
stewardship.
little bit?
Okay. So, stewardship. I don't know why, but that I'm like that. I'm very much intuitive. I very much I like I am very much spirit led. And when we started, it was like that word was like boop, right in the head, like stewardship, right? Stewardship. What's stewardship, right? When you're born, you're given one body. This is my body. I am the steward of my body. I'm caretaker of this body, right? And so stewardship is who we are and how we show up in life, right? I am a steward in my own life. Today, I show up for myself, right? But I
Mhm.
also show up for others. I'm a steward over my cat. I'm a steward over my apartment. I'm a steward over my son. I'm a steward over, the body that I'm in. I'm a steward at this moment. I'm being a steward of love. I'm sharing, I'm sharing what I've gained in my journey so that others can cultivate, right? So that I'm planting seeds so that others can cultivate and reap the benefit of the work that I've done, right? You don't have to hit a rock bottom to stop where you are and change,
Agreed.
like to take that in and to understand the magnanimity of stewardship, right? And it goes into like the time thing too, right? So what a precious thing time. It's the most invaluable thing we have. We don't get it back. We don't know how much time we have. I don't know how much time I have. I just know that I have now at this moment. What kind of steward am I being? Am I being neglectful, right? It's like a landlord. Does he take care of the apartment? Does he take care of the house, right? Or is he a slumlord and just lets it go to crap, right? If you let it go to crap, then you're going to have crap, right? It's going to fall apart. It's not going to be
Yeah.
inhabitable anymore, right? So if I'm going to be a good
Right.
steward, I need to take care of my body. I need to recognize that as I continue going deeper into that journey of self-love, right? Part of the journey is, again, it goes into the layers thing, right? I don't have access to the next layer until I've gone through this one. And the
Right.
deep, and as I continue to, I go through this one, a process, done with that one, and then a new layer of stuff comes up, right? And one more time, it's not why me, it's like, okay, what am I going to see? Right? And more things are being revealed because I've got a lifetime of misinformation, a lifetime of experiences, a lifetime of things that have gone on in and where I wasn't a good steward. So I'm in that home repair phase where I'm fixing things up, right? I'm
Yeah.
learning how to care for Rose. I'm learning how to care for a child. I'm learning how to care for my special needs cat. I'm learning how to care for the things around me. Being a good steward. I feed the birds because I like how they sing outside, right? And what ended up happening was I had this dead back part. There was nothing there and it didn't grow for years. And the minute I started feeding those birds, all of a sudden now I got a jungle out there. I, I kid you not. All of a sudden, I've got these beautiful sunflowers and beautiful flowers. And literally, there are plants as tall as me back there. And I'm just like, okay, and it all started with love, right? Self-love, loving. I'm unconditionally loving. I'm feeding the birds. I like how they sing for me. I love that they sit out there and they sing. So I feed them. And now all of a sudden, because I'm being a good steward of the things around me, the beings in my life, now I have this beautiful garden of plants that I didn't plant. They're just there, right? And it's beautiful. That's love. That's love made visible. That's my love that is made visible to me, showing, the world is reflecting back to me what I'm putting into it because
Yeah.
I am a steward of love, right? I love my body. So I'm conscious of what I consume. What kind of things am I reading? What am I watching on TV? Actually, I don't watch TV, I read, but I do watch movies with my son. What kind of food am I putting into my body? What kind of relationships do I have? How am I showing up in my relationships, right? I have a relationship with this man, and he's very much in the process of his process of change, right? And it's just super weird because it's such a natural relationship. We just connect in our hearts, right? In such a deep way. And it's uncomfortable because it's so natural. There's no like, right? It's not like that at all. It's not that butterflies the way that I had with my kids.
Right.
It's not. It's that natural love that just, I love you because you're you, right? But mind you, he's in the stages of change, right? And because I'm unconditionally loving, I can meet him where he's at, and part of that has been having to learn how to be a good steward within that relationship, right? Being a good steward means, how am I showing up in that relationship? Who am I in that relationship? Because what I've had to set some boundaries because he's having some challenges getting, getting some things straight. And so part of loving myself and loving him is having a boundary and saying, look, I'm going to give you some space to do what you got to do, right? Because there's certain things that you're doing right now that you're not going to treat me that way. So I'm going to set this boundary. And when you're ready to, correct some behaviors that are not acceptable, that I will not accept, then we can work through it. If not, that's okay. I love you, be in peace and move on, but this is where I'm at. I'm not going to talk to you on the phone, right? If you're going to act like that, I'm not talking to you on the phone. Like, you don't talk to me like that. I don't talk to you like that. And it's like, he wants to talk. And I'm like, no, I'm not showing up in this. I'm not showing up in this situation as anyone other than Rose. Rose is kind, Rose is loving, and I'm not going to talk to you in any other way. And well, what if I need to hear it hard like that? Well, then you need to call some man, one of your men friends, and get it hard from one of them, because I don't show up like that today. I'm not going to show up other than me. I don't want to be talked to with disrespect. I don't want to be yelled at. I don't want to be, cussed out. I don't want to be treated in any way that's not kind and loving. So that's who I show up as all the time. Doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter how you behave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever relationship I'm in, whatever type of relationship I'm in, right? I love myself unconditionally, and I get to show up as Rose, and I get to be a good steward, right? Because I'm a steward over my behavior. I'm a steward over who I am as I show up into that relationship, because I can only control me. I can only control my attitude, my behavior, my conversation, right? So how I show up in that relationship is what I'm a steward over. So if I show up and I'm patient and I'm loving and I'm understanding, I'm giving him room and space to grow, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also setting the boundary that no, I don't participate in toxic behavior, right? If you love me and you want to have some sort of relationship with me, then you're going to learn to love yourself. And, there's no ultimatum here. I just want you to love yourself and understand that I'm not going to participate in any toxic, dysfunctional behavior. Like, no, I don't get jealous. I don't need to be jealous. I'm not in competition with anyone. Like I show up as the best version of me today. I'll be a better version of me tomorrow, and an even better version of me in a couple of days from now. But all I have is this very moment here. So I'm going to be the best that I can be. I'm going to show up and I'm going to cultivate love. I'm going to cultivate joy. I'm going to cultivate peace. I'm going to cultivate serenity. I'm going to cultivate a space of total acceptance and understanding and patience, because we all have to grow. We've all been misled somewhere by experience, by being neglected, by being abused, by having trauma, by having relationships that didn't go right, and wondering, well, what's wrong with me, right? Well, maybe it's not what's wrong with you. Maybe it's about, what do I need to learn right now?
Yes.
Do I have healthy boundaries, right? Do I love myself?
Am I loving myself in this moment?
Yes. And if I am, and if I believe that I'm loving myself, is that love for me a healthy love? Because I thought I loved myself. I thought I loved my kid's dad. And I know that I did, but my perception of love was off.
Right.
I know what it is to have a healthy love today. I know how to love someone in a healthy way today. I was a steward in that relationship with him. I was a steward of chaos. I was a steward of abuse. I was a steward of dysfunction, because that's how I showed up. I couldn't even love my kids right. I've got a 20-year-old daughter who we clash, and she hasn't, in the process of my healing journey, I've had to make amends to my children, right? And my oldest hasn't forgiven me, and she's told me how she feels, right? I went through that custody thing, and they were taken, and then 2 of them came back. And one more time, that issue of stewardship, right? I knew that I had created damage and I couldn't undo it. But what I could do was give them some coping skills, right? So as a good steward of my children, I put them in therapy. I had them with a therapist of their own and a therapist of me and them alone each, and then the three of us together, right? And I chose to be accountable for my actions. And I wasn't just saying I was sorry, I was showing that I was sorry, and I was making that living amends that I know I can't undo what I did, but I can give you some healthy coping tools so that we can walk through this together.
Wow.
To rebuild the trust, to build a relationship that is based in healing and love, right? And I walked with them. And my son has been restored, thankfully. He's a healthy 10-year-old that's just thriving, right? And then my 20-year-old, she has her stuff. She was older. She, some of it took, some of it didn't. And she wasn't able to, she wasn't able to forgive me. She hasn't reached that space yet. And she's,
Sure.
told me how she feels really colorfully, and I've had to set that boundary, and I've had to because I've done the work, because I have unconditional love for her, for myself, I am able to accept that, okay, that's okay if you don't accept my amends. You don't have to forgive me. I love you, but I'm going to set the boundary. I'm not going to participate in the toxic dysfunctional behavior, but I'm here. I'm here when you're ready, and we will walk through it together in a loving way. I'm not going to scream and fight with you.
Wow.
Even if it means that we don't have a relationship right now. Right?
Yeah.
I have a middle daughter, my 15-year-old. I haven't seen her in 6 years. And it was very painful to walk through. There was a lot of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of shame in that situation. That was something that actually processed very intensely. You probably saw that in December, this last December, of every day. Like every day, her birthday is Christmas. And every year I go through this, I was going through these like massive depressions, and just, I got tired of it. I was like, okay, enough, dude. I can't do this anymore. Right. And the 11th step in 11th step talks about seeking a conscious contact with a power greater than myself, right? And I wanted to go deeper into that, and I was like, okay, show me any area of my life where I need forgiveness or whatever. And then that daughter came up, right? Madison came up, and it was literally on the eve of December, and all the stupid Facebook memories kept being her. And I'm like, okay, I hear you. I hear you, spirit. You're talking to me. So what would you have me do? And I meditated on it, and I decided I was going to go on a journey, and the same as the abandonment journey, same as every other journey. I decided, okay, I just need to feel it, right? So beginning on December 1st, all the way to December 25th, every single day, I got up, I fed the birds, I got my coffee, I sat, did my prayer, did my meditation, and then I sat with a picture of her, a video of her. It was so painful. So painful. But I sat with the feeling. I sat with the guilt. I sat with the shame. I sat with the blaming myself, that I did this to myself. I did this to her. I did this to my kids. And I processed the grief that I felt, right? And when I got past the grief and the guilt and the shame and the blame, I began to realize that the only reason why I was still feeling it was because I was robbing myself of the experience of loving my daughter. I was so terrified that if I let myself love her, that I was going to die in pain. I was terrified that if I let myself love her, that I was going to drink again, or I was going to use drugs again, right? I was terrified. I don't want that life back. I have worked so hard, right, to stay sober. And so I was terrified. I realized that. I was just like, wow. And so I'm causing more pain because I'm refusing to feel the pain, and I'm refusing to allow myself to love this child, right? And I was doing this whole thing where like I was processing like some loneliness, right? At the same time, like kind of like it was weird because I always get these lessons at the same time because they lock. right? And
Yeah.
so I'm like, why do I feel lonely? Like, I don't ever feel lonely. And all of a sudden now I'm feeling lonely. And what I realized was it was grief, right? When you have a heart full of love, we're made to love. We are designed to love, right?
Mm.
And when I'm not expressing love in some form, it gets stuck inside of me. And when it's stuck inside of me, it creates a sense of grief and pain, because just like the pain and the trauma that stays trapped in my body, so does that love. And it becomes stagnated and it becomes toxic and it becomes poisonous, because then it turns in on me, right? Because I'm not doing what I was designed to do, which is to love me, to love you, to be okay with feeling not okay, right? Because it's not going to
Mhm.
kill me to not feel good. I had to walk outside my comfort zone. I had to step outside of self, right? And understand that it wasn't about me. I was robbing me of her. And I realized that I can love her and not have her in my life today. It's not going to stop the joy of living. It's not going to stop the joy that I have of those memories, right? My
Mhm.
higher power's will in my life today is that she's not here, right? I wasn't a good steward of my children. And this is the result of that. However, what I have found is that there was a blessing that came from that moment. What I have found through the work and real deep soul searching and to really love myself where I'm at is that there was a purpose behind the pain. That's what I do for a living. I help people get their kids back. I work in policy reform because I want to change things, right? I want to help other people who went through what I went through so that they get to live the life that I want, the life with my kids. I don't have it today, but you know what? I'm helping other people do it,
Wow.
right? Because
Awesome.
that pain was my purpose. So even though it was terrible for me, I get to turn it into something loving, a gift for somebody else, because it gives me passion and it gives me a fire like nobody knows, because I know what it feels like to grieve the loss of a living child and to have to live with it. You know, I was given a vision. I was given a vision. I was walking through the park while I was in that process of processing the grief, right? I was given this vision. I was walking through the park and it looked like I was walking with my ex, and a car pulled up, and it was my mother-in-law and my ex in the car, and she was holding my daughter, and she looked like a little round ball wrapped in black, and she was all squished up and her face looked all bruised, and she looked like she was like wincing in pain, and I was like, oh my god, what did you do to her? And I ran and I grabbed this little ball of baby, and I started running through this park to this space where the sun was shining, and it was like a clearing in the trees, right? Because everything else was all dark. And so I ran to where it was and I sat on the ground, and I began to clean her face. And I started pulling this black stuff, and it was so hard to pull it off of her. And I was like, what did you do to her? And my mother-in-law was like, I was telling her that she needed to die. And I was giving her drugs because I was trying to kill her. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I was like frantic, like cleaning her face, and I'm pulling this black stuff off of her. And then all of a sudden, like her face looked clear and the wincing stopped, and she was just kind of like looked like she was sleeping, and her hair kind of like fell, and she's got like gold colored hair, and her hair fell. I saw it kind of like cascading out. And then all of a sudden her eyes opened and she smiled at me. She smiled and she said, I'm so glad you're here. And it was weird, like one of those little shrinky things. You remember those shrinky dinks when we were little kids? You pour water on them and they grow. All of a sudden, she grew. She grew, and she was small, and she started running in the sun. And as she was running, she got bigger. And when I woke up, I was like, what a weird dream. I was like, I felt good, but I felt scared and I felt sad. It felt like a nightmare, but it felt like something good at the same time. And I went to wake my son up, and what I realized was that it was a vision of my future. I wasn't walking with my kid's dad to the park. I was walking with my son in the future.
Wow.
And when she comes back to me, those are all the things that she will have gone through. And that if I continue to do the work on me, that I'm going to be able to hold her through all of that hard stuff. And I'm going to be able to love her and help her get through all of that blackness, right? So that she can come and so she can grow.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. What a journey, Rose.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning. That's the cool part, is this is just the beginning, right?
Yes.
I'm barely 6 years deep, and here we are.
Beautiful. I'd love to do this again, maybe in a couple
Absolutely.
years to
Anytime,
reflect back where you've
make it
been.
happen, right?
Oh, it's so good. So good. Okay, well, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to share with our audience about this journey, about self-love, stewardship?
I don't know. There's just so much. There's so much. It's a freeing experience.
Mm.
It's
There it is.
freeing.
If you're
And
seeking freedom, dive deep.
yes, absolutely. Well, it has changed my life. It has given me, a life beyond my wildest dreams, right? Um, it is really, it's been really painful. I'm not gonna lie. It's been really painful, but it has been worth it. If you're struggling with pain, if you're struggling with loss, if you're struggling with grief, there is a way out. There is a way out. You're worthy of love. You are worthy of happiness. You are worthy of joy. Take the step. Don't change some things, change everything. Give yourself room to breathe, be patient. If you need time to cry, then allow yourself time to cry. It's worth every second. It has been breathtaking and beautiful to come out the other side, and to imagine that even happened. Is like, it's just a trip. There's help. If you can get help for yourself, get help for yourself. If you can't get help for yourself, then just find a power greater than you, and just seek the courage and the strength and the open-mindedness to get in and do something. It's worth it. Love yourself. If you don't love you, I love you. That's it. I don't know what else to do other than just love and hold space and just tell people, like, I love you. I love you so much. I pray for that all the time. I pray for the healing and the ability to come out and that others get to experience that joy that I feel. I'm not sad, I'm joyful. I feel joyful, tears of joy and love, that I'm able to do this, and to be here right now. And I really appreciate you. I appreciate this opportunity to share something, to share my heart with others, in hope that, this will help them find that courage, right? maybe my pain is going to be someone else's courage, that they can walk through it too. You know,
Yeah.
thank you for allowing me to expose myself and expose my heart and to expose, you know, truths, my truth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable and being open and honest and loving. And yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.